I am pleased to be presenting to you today about the Digital Radio Mondial standard. My name is Aldred Dreyer, and I'm the current chairperson of the DRM South Africa group. And with me to present on the technical bits about the DRM standard is Radu Obreja. Next slide. A little bit about the DRM Consortium. It's a non-for-profit organization with around 100 international members consisting of broadcasters, manufacturers, network operators, and regulators. The consortium membership is open to all companies, organizations, associations, as well as individuals. We have active platforms in Germany, India, Brazil, Russia, and expert groups in Pakistan and Indonesia. And now recently, at the beginning of 2021, the South African group was relaunched. Next slide. Our key members is truly global, and there are some famous brands here, Bosch, the BBC, Dolby, as well as receiver manufacturers such as Gospel. Next slide. A little bit about the activity of DRM around the world. Currently, the biggest service is operating in AM in India, covering over 900 million people. And there are 4.2 million cars in India that have DRM receivers built into them. In China, there are 7 shortwave transmitters covering the whole country. And in Brazil, they've done successfully conducted tests in both FM as well as VHF. Next slide. In Africa, the Southern African Development Community, SADC, have adopted DRM as the digital sound broadcasting standard, as well as DAB+. In the UK, international services are operating. The BBC World Service is operating, and that emits into Europe as well as India. And in the US, the US Coast Guard is using DRM for transmission as well. Next slide. Now I want to hand over to Radu, who will do the technical bits around DRM. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I will be very brief. Thank you very much, Aldred, for the introduction. Basically, DRM is the global standard which runs in all the frequency bands. We have DRM for local and regional coverage, basically band 1, band 2, the FM band, and band 3, above 30 megahertz. And we have also the DRM standard for the medium and large area coverage, in medium wave, short wave mainly, and also in long wave. What is very important to understand is that DRM is one standard. There are not 2 standards, it's one standard, and it has the same key features throughout. Next slide, please. Talking about features, we have here more choice for listeners, up to 3 programs plus multimedia on one single frequency, excellent audio quality, multimedia applications, and very good coverage and robust signals using also the single frequency networks. Automatic tuning, and what is very important is that DRM has embedded the emergency warning functionality, distance education, and DRM is green and energy efficient. You have between 40 and 90% savings by using DRM. Also, there are no licenses required, and this standard is not a multiplex solution. Next slide, please. In terms of local coverage, the FM bands, it is the most recent part of the DRM standard, and it has cost savings, as I mentioned before, between 50 and 90%. Next slide, please. In the FM band, just to remind you, the analog system, the analog function of FM is in a block of 200 kilohertz. The DRM instead runs on 96 kilohertz. So in one block of 200 kilohertz, actually two DRM blocks can fit in, which have each of them 3 audio programs and 1 data channel. So that means in one analog block of 200 kilohertz, you have 2 DRM programs, 2 DRM blocks with 6 audio programs and multimedia. Next slide. In Johannesburg, we have demonstrated in our very successful test that we had a few years back, that in that very crowded space in Johannesburg, where there are a lot of FM stations, you can find white spaces in which the DRM of 96 kilohertz can fit in very well. So in Johannesburg, we identified that you can fill in those white spaces, creating actually 48 extra radio programs by using DRM. Next slide, please. In terms of the large area coverage, the AM bands, what is very important to note is that the sound quality is exactly like FM. So very, very good sound, very clear, no interferences over a very large area. So in thousands of kilometers away, you have a very, very precise and very clear sound. Next slide, please. In terms of receivers, we can say that we have made a lot of progress. We have receivers in cars, mobiles, and portable receivers. And here is an array of some of the receivers that are on the market. Next slide. As Aldred already mentioned, in India, you have more than 4.2 million cars with receivers, line fit receivers, which is an increase already of 28.2% over the last few years. Key brands are Toyota, Maruti Suzuki, which is the largest car brand in India, and lately Mercedes-Benz joined the club. Next slide, please. And I'll hand over now to Aldred, who is going to talk more about South Africa and the developments there. Thank you very much.
South Africa, we have conducted 2 successful trials, one demonstrating DRM in FM, in the FM band, and one demonstrating DRM in the AM band. And the links in the presentation, you are able to access the test reports. What is important from these tests, the results, we were able to demonstrate spectrum savings as well as energy savings. And we also demonstrated that there is no interference of the DRM signal with the existing analog FM services. Next slide. What is significant is the development that happened in 2020 is that the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies published a policy direction on digital sound broadcasting, adopting both DRM as well as DAB+ as standards for digital sound broadcasting. Next slide. These standards are the DRM in FM, in AM, which operates in bands 535.5 to 1606.5 kilohertz, and DRM in FM, which operates in the FM band of 87.5 to 108 megahertz. Next slide. Earlier this year, in April, the regulator, the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, that is what ICASA stands for, issued regulation for digital sound broadcasting. And what is contained in that regulation is that DSB will be rolled out in 2 phases. Phase 1 will be the big markets of Gauteng, Cape Town, and Durban. And second phase would be the rollout to the rest of the country. Existing broadcasters will simulcast their programs on the digital radio platforms. This is both DRM and DAB+. and the date for that will be issued, specified by the regulator. Unfortunately, new licensees have to wait for a 3-year period. So after the 3-year simulcasting period, the regulator will issue an invitation to apply for new applicants to apply for a digital sound broadcasting license. The regulators also created a digital technical advisory group, and this group, the objective of this group is to advise the regulator on technical matters relating to the rollout of DAB services in South Africa. The regulator will also appoint a multi-channel distributor via an ITA process, and the job of a multi-channel distributor would be to distribute and operate a multiplex. And as we've heard in the presentation, with DRM, you don't need a multiplex, so this would predominantly be for DAB. Broadcasters who are self-providing, such as community broadcasters, must apply for an RF spectrum license in order to operate their own transmitter. Next slide. As a South African group, what we've done since March of this year was to register with the Company's Intellectual Property Commission, CIPC, as well as a non-for-profit company, as well as we've registered with the Department of Social Development as a non-for-profit company. Our objective really is to create awareness of DRM with the general public, the stakeholders, suppliers, manufacturers, retailers, as well as government on the use and adoption of DRM. We've also revamped the website. The URL is www.drmsa.org, and you can go visit that website for all updated information on what's happening in South Africa around DRM. We've also applied to the South African Bureau of Standards to participate in the technical group that will be developing a standard for digital receivers for sound broadcasting. Next slide. If you want to connect with us, you're welcome to visit the consortium's website on drm.org. And if you want to learn a little bit more about DRM, you can download the handbook on the URL provided. Next slide. And you can view a few videos on the same website. The URL is there, videos.drm.org. I would like to thank the organizers of the Radio Tech Conference for allowing us the opportunity to present to you about DRM and about the activities happening in South Africa.